Yeah,
There we go.
got it. Okay. All right, we are recording. So let me ask, can I please, who's in the Green Institute? Is Linda there, or who is the moderator right now? Because if you could please give me screen access so that I could share my slides, that would be great. Oh, there I am. I'm sorry. I didn't realize I didn't have my video. See, I'm glad we met a few minutes early. I apologize. I really apologize. Live transcript reaction. Let me see. Can I share my screen? No, it doesn't appear yet that I can share my screen. Okay. At 2 o'clock, we'd like to get started, please. Okay. All right, we'll get the screenshots up in a moment or two. But that's quite all right. So we're at this point, what I like to do is greetings to our audience. Thank you very much for joining us on the Green Room today. I'm Jason McSparron. I'm the moderator for the Green Room here at the Green Institute. Today, our discussion is about sustainable inclusion, bridging queer identity and sustainability values. And we have two guests with us today, which is really nice. We've got Gerod Rdy and Sophia Paul. Please give everybody your silent applause and welcomes to Gerod and Sophia. Let me please introduce them. Gerod Rdy is the founder and former president of Out for Sustainability. Gerod has followed his passion for connecting far-out vision with near-in action. He's animated by identity intersectionality, and where he sees fresh opportunities in spaces between established business practices and shifting cultural norms is where he operates best. He is an innovative strategy consultant focused on business design, and he has worked with some of the largest organizations around the country and around the world. He applies his entrepreneurial creativity to benefit clients across sectors. He's worked in retail, finance, beauty, and energy. And when he has a few extra minutes, his hobbies include long walks with his dog in Brooklyn, sharing meals with friends, and traveling the world. Thank you very much for being here with us today, Gerod.
Glad to be here.
Thank you. And I'd also like to introduce Sophia Paul. Sophia is the chair of the board at Out for Sustainability. Sophia is passionate about Out for Sustainability's mission of environmental justice and climate resilient programs created for and by LGBTQIA+ communities. Sophia has professional experience in collective processes and promoting diversity, equity, and inclusion in the environmental movement. A graduate of Oberlin College, Sophia worked as a volunteer coordinator at a social service organization that focused on community engagement and food justice. Following that, they pursued a Master's of Science at the School of Environment and Sustainability at the University of Michigan. They focused on the studies on environmental justice in collaborative natural resource management. Currently, Sophia coordinates research and institutional diversity and equity in the environmental movement and plans conferences for young people focused on equity in the environmental movement. Currently living in Ohio, Sophia is employed at the Trust for Public Land. Sophia spends their free time gardening, baking, and training for their first marathon. Good luck with that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And everything else you're doing.
Thank you.
So thank you two very much for being here. We can start our conversation by talking about what was the genesis for your program, Out for Sustainability. Gerod, could you talk to us about that, please?
The famous mute button. Yeah, absolutely. I was I'd been involved with the queer community for a while, and then I decided, but I also had this deep passion for sustainability. So I went to business school at the Bainbridge Graduate Institute before it was acquired by Presidio, and I found these amazing progressive people who are actively inclusive, but a completely invisible queer community within that. So it wasn't that there weren't queer people present, but there was no connection. it felt like I was divorced from this other part of my identity. And so notoriously, I asked around and said, is there any kind of organization that exists kind of along these lines, so I can get a date? But it really became much more than that very quickly. So we started doing stakeholder meetings and figure out, like, does the world actually need this kind of organization, or is it just me and maybe a few other people? So we built a board. We started doing some programming, and the thing I wanted to leave on this one is, through all of the things we've done early on, this try and learn model, it showed that even if you don't really like camping like me, you can get involved with the environmental movement and the queer community, and really bring these things together and get engaged wherever you are.
I admire your entrepreneurial spirit. It really is. It's a good quality to have, in especially, the world needs leaders, and it's really good to see. So tell us a little bit about, were there any challenges at the beginning that you had to overcome?
A lot of it was just focus. What is the problem that we're solving? I got a lot of feedback of, like, this is nice, but do these two things have anything in common? And the original example I gave was, there's gay running groups, there's queer food contingents out there that are doing amazing work. Sustainability is so intrinsic to who we are as people, and so essential to focus on as humanity, that the logic became, we need to give everything we've got to surviving as a species, and we can't survive if we ignore this incredibly essential and dynamic part of the human race. So in that respect, I think it ended up proving itself out that there is a value to this kind of organization. And thankfully, there are a few others now doing this kind of work as well. Was it 15 years later or something? But I mean, the point is, it's been amazing to see how many points sustainability crosses with the queer community, like food, like health, like transportation, like anything. Sustainability is everywhere. It's every part of who we are and how we operate. So yeah, that would be my 2 cents there.
So I just got one quick question for you. So you started, you say, about 15 years ago, doing this work?
Yeah. 2008, 13?
2008, okay. Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah.
Right. And how large is your group nowadays in terms of membership and
Yeah, so we've never
right
been,
across the country?
I stepped down from the board coincidentally right before COVID, for a job that was going to have me traveling like 3 weeks a month. Anyway, the point is, so I'm not totally up on the numbers. Sophia, you may be able to step in, but it's never been in a membership organization, so we don't have kind of like a roster. But in terms of engagement, before that, I think for our 10-year in 2018, it was like 5,000 people had been touched in some way by the organization.
Excellent. Good.
And I'm sure it's grown since then. So
yeah. No, that's a significant amount of people, because they have friends and contacts themselves. So that's really good. Yeah, I know that's a really good spread. Yes. Excellent.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Gerod. Just give us 1 second. I'd like to bring Sophia in, but before we do that, I just want to highlight one thing. Screen share, and this one here.
You get to hear much more from Sophia after the origin story.
Yes, certainly. Okay, yes, absolutely. I've got a question to ask Sophia. I'm curious about how Out for Sustainability is emerging. So perhaps you can talk about the mission. But prior to that, I just want to again just highlight our new guests today. We've got Gerod and Sophia from, we're talking about bridging queer identity and sustainability values. They work for Out for Sustainability. You can find Out for Sustainability at out4s.org. And then one thing I'd like to also, you go Green Institute website at greeninstitute.ng. You can, the latest by Akinsamu. Adenike is director and founder of the Green Institute. And this is a fantastic book. You can read about the principles of green and sustainability science. The book is focused on the principles of green and sustainability science using various case studies across Africa and the world. The book contributes to the literature about environmental science by expounding on the natural systems and the scientific aspects of sustainability. Okay, so if we go back to our screen, I don't want to share, and we'll go back to asking a question to Sophia. Sophia, please, could you talk to us about how Out for Sustainability is emerging?
Absolutely. So Gerod provided a lot of wonderful history and context, and I will just say for myself that I joined the board of Out for Sustainability in 2019. And then in 2020, like many organizations, we experienced some shifts in our programming. So as Gerod said, he had to take a step back. A couple of other board members had to take a step back. There was a pandemic that caused us to have to put a halt to a lot of the in-person programming we had planned. And, you know, so it also just sort of caused us to reevaluate, okay, where are we as an organization? Who do we want to be? What do we want to be doing? And then in particular last summer, you know, a lot of us felt like we were very involved in racial justice work in our local communities, in mutual aid efforts in our local communities. So Out for Sustainability didn't feel like we weren't sure sort of how to, we had some virtual events, but we weren't totally sure how to be engaging. So we took sort of a step back. And then this year we've sort of said, okay, let's refocus. Let's think about who Out for Sustainability is, what Out for Sustainability is in 2021, given what we're hearing from our constituencies, given what the people on the board right now are working on and are passionate about. And we wrote a new mission statement that I will read quickly. And that mission statement is, Out for Sustainability provides a platform for co-creating climate resilience and environmental justice by and for LGBTQIA+ communities. We do this through advocacy, training, fundraising, and relationship building. And so climate resilience and environmental justice are themes that had been definitely a part of Out for Sustainability as I saw it, but not made explicit in the mission. And we said, you know, like, this is where we want to put our energy. This is where we see a lot of our communities. And when we talk about climate resilience, we think about, okay, sort of social and ecological resilience. And in a world of climate crisis and more of these natural disasters, queer people have unique vulnerabilities, but also really unique resilience and unique opportunities for transformation. So we want to really think about that. And when we talk about environmental justice, we think about sort of who is disproportionately impacted by environmental bads, like these natural disasters or like coal plants. And historically, that has been a lot of low-income communities and communities of color. And of course, LGBTQ people are represented in those communities as well as sort of who has access to environmental goods like parks and fresh food. And then also we want to take sort of a step back from that and say, okay, but who is making these decisions and who has a seat at those tables and how can we think about those systems? So that is sort of what we're bringing to our new mission statement this summer.
Yeah, no, that's really wonderful. You know, my follow-up question to Gerod was to ask, you know, about some of the challenges, because again, I want to bring out the, you know, the entrepreneurial spirit of, you know, you two and everyone who you're working with, because we have a lot of young activists or could be activists in our audience. So I like to talk about this in the entrepreneurial spirit. And also what you were saying a minute ago, Sophia, talking about how the pandemic was kind of a wrench in the works. And then you had some of the administrators making some changes. So there were shifts in the organization. You had to be flexible, you had to adapt. And actually that strengthens an organization, because it seems to me you came through it and you've actually focused on a whole new mission and been able to really maybe hone your approach, right? And your messaging. That's really great. That's really great. Let me see. So can we talk a little bit about, how about a little bit about the training for Out for Sustainability? Can you talk about training that you might provide for the communities?
Absolutely. So like I said, a lot of this is emerging and we're still figuring out exactly what it's going to look like. But a lot of the training, we're really thinking about the climate resilience piece, and we're thinking about, working with LGBTQ centers in communities and saying, like, how can they be better prepared for these climate events? How can they help their local communities to be prepared for whatever climate disasters might be occurring in their communities? And then we're also thinking about these service providers who help after a climate disaster occurs, and are they equipped to work with LGBTQ people? Do they know how to work? A lot of times transgender people and transgender youth will experience challenges in those situations, and a lot of these service providers are increasingly privatized and might not have those resources. And so we're hoping to be able to provide some of those trainings on sort of both the LGBTQ community center side and the post-disaster service provider side to help our communities be more resilient.
It's really fantastic because, again, we live in a broad and diverse community of the United States, so to speak, and of the globe, even more broadly. But there are pockets of communities, and like you say, some have more voice than others. So I really think it's admirable that you in the group, Gerod and the rest of you have thought to, really focus in on the community of the LGBTQ plus factors and everything, because there are, again, when we talk about the way that different people from different intersectionalities experience the pros and cons of society, the hardships and challenges of society, people experience them differently. And it really is important for those who have access to resources and those who are either doing trainings or doing survival seminars, things like this, really understand how to interact with different communities and really be able to reach people where they are. So again, you're doing a great service. This is a fantastic group. Could you tell us a little bit about how you rebuild relationships and as you move into a more how are you rebuilding your relationships as you're building your organization into a more national vision? And Gerard, I think you'd like to speak to that.
Yeah. So we started very much a CIO organization in terms of our focus and our energy and we even, we were exclusive to board members in the Seattle, Washington area. Okay. And it was great. But then we started to think, we always had this inkling, this is bigger than just the Pacific Northwest, let alone the Emerald City. So it was a tough decision. How do you go from an all volunteer organization that's servicing a few million people region and having a great time and doing great work to being national, where most people have never heard of us, let alone having the infrastructure and the tools and everything needed to get engaged. And it required a big shift in the board. But I would say the main thing is the local connection still remains the most important thing. Whether you're connected to 50 other people in your local community who are aware and active and out for sustainability or not, there's still that, the organization is still very much grounded in local action, and that's always been our intent, and I think that's why it's worked. It's organic. We not every community is the same. Originally, Earth Day was our biggest program. It was cheeky and fun, and Earth Day, the Gay Way, and whatnot. And we had a lot of success, but different communities around the country started adapting from a park rebuild or something to youth engagement or a lecture on sustainable housing or whatever the community need was. And that's where we saw the adaptation, which is, as Sophia mentioned earlier, the resilience of the LGBTQIA+ community is that we adapt very quickly because we have to. We don't get a choice about adaptation in general. Like, there's very few people I know who grew up in a household that was completely affirming to who they are as a person. So you learned very quickly to adapt, and I think that worked for the organization as well.
All right, great. I've got a few more questions before we ask for questions from our audience, but I just want to encourage our audience to start to think about what types of questions you might want to ask Sophia or Gerod. but just give me a second here because I want to share my screen and then go back to this very quickly as we have another break. So, so again, we are here with Gerod and Sophia from Out for Sustainability. Out for Sustainability provides a platform for co-creating climate resilience and environmental justice by and for LGBTQ plus communities. And they do this through advocacy, training, fundraising, and relationship building. If you want to continue your education, take a short course at the Green Institute. The Green Institute has several courses that are led by renowned sustainability experts. They're inexpensive and they are really good to help you entrepreneurs kind of focus your ideas on how you in particular can help your community to become more environmentally sustainable. Okay, coming back, let me see. So I want to talk a little bit about some of the programs that you have. Can you tell us a little bit about how you promote just and equitable social behaviors through content and connection in your Fab Planet program, the Fab Planet program? Can you tell us a little bit about that, please?
I'll start it off because I started it with before Sophia, or we started it before Sophia joined. But just quickly, we started off with a social sustainability conference back in 2009. It was one of our first programming moments, and we had no money, and a hotel put us up, and it was great. The point is, it was always about intersectionality and what is the impact on the social side of sustainability, not just, so to speak, pure environmental conservation, which was more of the topic of the day at the time. So we were talking about race and ethnicity in housing and redlining. We were talking about gender and healthcare, and how do you code trans identity within the medical system. And we were talking about age and community, how you have to go back in the closet in aging centers oftentimes, or as you age, and how do you fight that kind of fight to live your whole life for your whole life. Then a few years later, we were doing some other formats and kind of came back to that conference format, and we're able to go to Seattle and San Francisco, and had ambitions to do another one, but COVID. But the point is, it was really about pushing the envelope of what is the thinking that's next generation, that's leading edge, if you will, bleeding edge, some term it, and then how do we disseminate that information broadly? And I think that's where I think Sophia's going to pick it up.
Thank you. Sophia, please add to that.
Yeah, so people love Fab Planet. I think people love it as sort of a space to make those connections. I've worked in different parts of the environmental movement, and queer people are always like, oh my gosh, I feel like I don't see myself reflected, or I don't know, I don't get to talk with other people who are having some of my same experiences. And so people really love spaces like Fab Planet, where they can build those relationships and also sort of build solidarity and come to a better understanding, because of course there's also a lot of diversity within the LGBTQ community, and people have these varied experiences. And I think it's really important to have a space where people can learn from each other, as well as learning about these important topics and build those connections and networks. There is still a pandemic. I do a lot of work with events in my actual job. And it's still, I think, very uncertain sort of when we're going to be able to bring people back together in a physical way. So we're thinking about, do we plan further out? Do we look at sort of how to have some of these virtual events? So we haven't made a full determination of that, but the Fab Planet model is very cool and very important to us as an organization, and definitely something we want to.
So may I ask you just a little bit of clarification? Is the Fab Planet is an online platform?
Fab Planet started as an in-person conference of sorts, and then we recorded the content and had it on SoundCloud. I think it's still there.
I think so.
Yeah, we have a lot of digital presence, and being an all volunteer organization, I know it's difficult to check the T's and I's and on every bit of the
Certainly.
of the ecosystem. But the point is, there is at least the Out 4S on SoundCloud has a bunch of the past sessions that you can listen to. They're dense, so it's like an hour of kind of hearing it in the background, but they're really strong.
Really? Okay. So the name of that is Fab Planet. It's the Fab Planet program, and you can find it digitally on Out for S on the SoundCloud. So OUT, the number 4, and then capital S on SoundCloud. For anyone in our audience who's interested in learning a little bit more about the content on the Fab Planet program. Thanks so much. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to ask, is there anyone in the audience that may have a question at this point? Any questions for Sophia or Gerod? Start to think about that. You can raise your hand and we will certainly let you in. Okay, well, as people in the audience are thinking about questions, let's see. There's also the Green Pride program. The Green Pride program is a way that Out for Sustainability promotes environmental sustainability. I'd like to hear a little bit about the origin and then the future of this program.
I'll keep
Green
the origin
Pride
short.
Yeah.
The main thing was we realized very quickly that talking to the audience at Pride, which is sort of the traditional model when you think about, let's go talk to people at Pride about how to be greener. It's exhausting. For anyone who's gone to Pride as a queer person, you have everyone volunteering on something else, and there's just no attention span. So we realized it's also actually the public building awareness that people actually do give it care about sustainability. It's working with the municipality because they're cautiously optimistic that they can make a difference, but they don't necessarily always have the cultural competency or entree into how to build policy that's going to push the envelope on Pride. And then the organizers themselves, I think that's the biggest, because they're hungry for it. But these are often all volunteer or lightly staffed organizations that have tremendous, they're organizing the biggest event of the year on no budget. Outdoor space events of the year in most cities are Pride events. So they want the help and they want the competency. They just needed help. So that's kind of where we left off.
Okay, interesting. So how might Sophia's
going to add it on the future. I didn't want to.
Okay, yeah, please. I was just going to ask a follow-up and then move over to Sophia, but yeah, please go right ahead.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, sure. And then you can ask whatever follow-ups you want. So yeah, I think something that I've noticed over the past couple of years, both through my work with Out for Sustainability and just as a person engaging with Pride and engaging with this community, is that people definitely still want to party and still want to go to Pride, but there's sort of more of a re-engagement around like the activist roots of Pride, and people are sort of starting to think like, okay, like what are all of these corporations doing here? And, how can we rethink this? And how can we rethink how we engage around Pride? And so there has been more of a hunger for the sort of more social mission of Pride, which has created a lot of natural engagement around our programming, which is great. And then once again, there was a pandemic. And so this past June, we focused on Pride outside and getting people outside and all of the health benefits for queer people and for everyone of getting outside and sort of connecting over social media in that way, rather than all going to a party together, sadly.
Right. No, I think that's really great. And yes, Pride is again a great celebration. People are always dancing. It's a lot of fun. People are making friends and being with friends. It's a party at its heart. But as you just mentioned, it's also at its heart a social movement, right? It's a stand up and see us and hear our voices. And the LGBTQ plus community, as you said earlier, is part of every community in our society. So, whether wealthy or poor, advantaged or disadvantaged. So, that sense of advocacy, that sense that we have to do something is also a big part of the Pride Parade as well, in terms of environmental, economic, educational issues as well. So I'm glad you're tapping into the fun, but also, still promoting, social awareness in issues around sustainability. So that's really great. And then there's another program that you have that's really interesting called Gerod Rdy. It's the Climate and Natural Disaster Preparedness Guide. It's specifically for LGBTQ plus community. Sophia, would you mind telling us a little bit about that?
Sure. Actually, Jared, do you want to talk a little bit about how this got started? And then I will get into sort of everything that is happening
Yeah,
now.
yeah, absolutely. Just very quickly, Gerod Rdy, we realized there's a lot of disasters. I can't remember which one because there's been so many. And there are a lot of great programs targeted at go to your local church, go to your local community center, which are not necessarily spaces where the LGBTQ plus community is welcome and or feels safe. So we decided that there was a need for this, and built on the stories that Sophia's going to tell.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah. So, and through that, I think, or in some other way, Out for Sustainability got connected with a doctoral student named Vanessa, who's actually creating a film as a part of their dissertation on queer people and climate resilience. It's focused on the Hurricane Maria and the Santa Rosa fires in California, and tells the stories of those disasters through queer people and their vulnerabilities and their resilience and the opportunities for transformation. And Vanessa is very cool and is now an expert in all of this. So we're so excited to be supporting their film and to be able to draw on their expertise in these areas, as well as, you know, with those specific disasters. And of course, there have just been so many other disasters over the past few years that have really inspired us to say, you know, Gerod Rdy is an incredibly important program, and how can we do? So we're thinking about how we can do more work around that, how we can, like I said earlier, work with LGBTQ centers, work with these community centers or shelters or whoever to help to make our communities more resilient.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
excellent.
And I want to point out two pieces of the Gerod Rdy guide that are very pertinent and also just really kind of cute. One is have a pride flag so you can find other people that you identify with and you would feel safe with, small or large. And the other one is, you know, have the ability to pass the time effectively and make sure you have the tools necessary to do that as well. So it's not just about food and water. Sometimes it's also about living fabulously at every moment.
There you go. I like that. Living fabulously at every moment. That makes plenty of sense. We're all trying to do that. And when you're dealing with some sort of disaster, natural disaster, you know, that's an upscale thought. You know, that's something you want to keep in mind. And if you can, that's the best way to go about it, for sure. I'd like to again invite the audience. Any questions from the audience? Please think about that. Just give me one moment. I'm going to go back to one more commercial break. Okay, so again, I just want to remind everybody that we are talking we're talking today with Gerod and Sophia from the from Out for Sustainability. You can find Out for Sustainability at http://out4s.org. So please take a look at their different programs and see how you can get involved in your own community. I'd like to also, again, put in a plug for Adenike Akinsumulo. She is the director and founder of the Green Institute, and her latest book is Principles of Green and Sustainability Science. Additionally, at the Green Institute, you can sign up to take courses. They're inexpensive, and they will help you develop your own ideas on how to live sustainably within with the environment within the Anthropocene. Additionally, I want to encourage people to follow the Green Institute and the Green Room at the Green HQ on all social media. You can find us on Twitter, on Facebook, and Instagram. So please look for us at the Green HQ. And here we are back. Ladies and gentlemen in the audience, do we have any questions? No. Okay. What I'd like to do is ask Sophia, in the event of a natural disaster, how does the administration from Out for Sustainability, how do you mobilize? What would be the actions you take in the event of a disaster in your local community?
That's a great question. And we're also, I do want to say we are a national board, so we are all located in different local communities.
Okay.
And so I think less of our focus is around sort of immediate disaster response, but more around sort of creating that preparedness and creating that awareness within communities, and sort of thinking about how can we prepare for these events. And it's an interesting balance because, as Gerod said, we do want to focus on sort of some of the living fabulously at every moment and, finding each other. But then we also want to think about some of the realities in our communities that, some demographics within the LGBTQ community are more likely to be experiencing poverty or homelessness, and sort of what do those people do in a disaster. And some demographics within the LGBTQ community are more likely to have chronic illnesses. And so those obviously present unique challenges depending on what type of natural disaster is going on. And so we really just want to think about more the preparedness. We don't necessarily have the capacity to be sort of reacting in the event of some type of disaster, although of course our board and many of the people engaged in our volunteers are very wonderful, civic-minded, mutual aid-minded people who, as citizens, will be engaging in their communities.
And if I could follow up on that real quick,
Sure.
I think that's very much in the spirit of Out for Sustainability right from the start. We never wanted to duplicate effort on other organizations. And we saw in that stakeholder meetings, like, what we determined 13 years ago, that there should not be a big bureaucratic organization. Out for Sustainability is not designed that way. And it never, I don't think there's ambition to change that. Duplicate, having a massive fundraising engine is not the point. So, and I don't mean that disparagingly to other organizations. They're doing the work of mobilizing people in the moment, and they need that kind of funding. We are a connector. We connect communities and connect these and add value to them. So I think, when there's a disaster, I've seen Out for Sustainability since, and I know what we did before, point to here's how you can get involved with someone else, or here's a resource for you out there that's already present. And I think that's true of all of our programming, not just disasters. But you make a good point. Like, what do you do? Well, we are good at the thinking and the adding that kind of when you're in that moment, when you're FEMA and you're there was that issue in Houston where someone got arrested for using the wrong bathroom gender during as a Katrina a fallout, and it was like that should never happen again, and that's what we're here for.
Great.
As much as we can with a large organization like that.
Right. Well, again, I appreciate the clarification on your mission. Again, you found your niche, and I think that it makes a lot of sense that there already are local and national, state, and national organizations that can react to natural disasters. Your niche is really to connect people and to give them information. Make sure that they're prepared ahead of time. Make sure that these issues and problems are on people's minds. And then not only are the issues and problems on their minds, but you're also providing them with ways of solving their problems once the disaster hits, or whether it's a rainfall or fire issue or whatever, right? Oh, I really appreciate that. Again, building community is really it's an admirable role for an institution. You're reaching out to people who, again, as we all know, are very often marginalized and are looking for stability and organization that they can trust and rely on. So again, Out for Sustainability is doing some fantastic work in their local and as a national organization. So it's fantastic. So let's talk a little bit about how could our audience connect with Out for Sustainability and possibly participate in your programs.
Great
What would
question.
people do in order to connect with you? Yes.
The first thing I would recommend is getting on our newsletter list, which you can find on our website, and perhaps following us on social media. We're particularly good at updating Instagram, but we are on most of your major social media networks.
Okay.
We are sort of right now as a board thinking about what volunteer roles we want to offer to people under our reconfigured mission and sort of who we want to bring in. And so we will hopefully be sending out information about that very soon. So definitely follow us. In the short term, though, I mentioned that we're working with Vanessa on the film Fire and Flood, and they are working on finishing up that film within the year. And if anyone in the audience wants to sort of spark a conversation like this with a group that they work with, you can hold a sneak peek film screening, which I believe costs some money, which helps to finish the film and provide mutual aid. And it's a fantastic film that really highlights a lot of these issues and would be wonderful for any type of group, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. So anyone who's interested in doing that, would they contact you via your email through Out for Sustainability, or how best could somebody find out more about Fire and Flood?
So you can get to the link for sort of, there's like a Fire and Flood landing page that you can get to through the Out for Sustainability website. You can also send us an email. Possibly if you Google Fire and Flood film, it'll come up, but I'm not sure. DM us on Instagram. We're very available.
Okay, fantastic. Since we're talking about the Fire and Flood, and you have kind of touched on this already, but I was wondering if you could just elaborate on how Out for Sustainability is supporting the film.
So very specifically, we are the fiscal sponsor for the film, which means that, you know, if you want charitable donations and you're not a nonprofit, this is so boring, you can partner with a nonprofit so that people giving those donations can know that they're going through a nonprofit and they're tax deductible. But Vanessa, who is a graduate student, doesn't have to like become a nonprofit for 3 years to make this film. But through that partnership, Vanessa is actually on our board now, and they are a wonderful part of the Out for Sustainability community.
Okay, and can you tell us a little bit about what are some of the themes that we would see in the film Fire and Flood?
Yeah, absolutely. It's very similar to a lot of what Gerod and I have been talking about. And what Vanessa does really well is sort of talks about the history of these places and the history of queer communities in those places, and then sort of goes through the narratives of survival and transformation and resilience of people going through these different natural disasters.
Okay, so can you tell us any specifics? Which disasters are they looking at? Which locations?
Oh yeah, sorry, I said this earlier, but maybe it got.
I know, I just want to kind of bring it together here,
Yeah. So the film looks at Hurricane Maria in Puerto Rico and the Santa Rosa fires in California, both of which happened in October of 2017. So it's really sort of two simultaneous narratives happening in lands that have somewhat similar histories of colonization.
Yes.
So,
Interesting. Okay, yeah, really fantastic. So again, talking to the audience, Fire and Flood, please take a look. There's a link at the Out for Sustainability website. We can also probably just do an internet search for Fire and Flood film. Really fantastic. Now I'm kind of interested to hear from our audience today. I'm really surprised that we have so few questions to this point. Anyone interested in raising their hand and addressing Gerod or Sophia?
I saw one of the comments was very encouraging. They're like, very inspired. No idea what to ask because it's sometimes new territory.
I'm just noticing that, yes.
Yeah.
So thank you very much, Sean Brian. We understand you don't always have a question, right? We're answering a lot of the questions as we go along. But you're inspired and very interested in the topic. So I think that that's fantastic because that's really what this is all about. Out for Sustainability is an outreach organization, and the Green Room is an educational outreach organization as well. So we have similar missions in that sense, and it's really great to collaborate here and to get out and share this message with people in the audience. Has there been anything that we've missed that you might want to elaborate on, Gerod?
I was thinking about that because
Yeah.
we're just a little ahead of time, which is great. And I wanted to talk about the tone of the organization, just because it's
Please.
fun, and I think it's representative of where the organization is going and where we started, and also the parallel with how sustainability is changing in the world as we face the reality of climate change more head on. You know, it's here. It's not in the future anymore. Not that it was ever in the future anymore, but you know, it's like it's very present in our lives
Very
now. And we
present.
started off, you know, Greenfest was like the only conference that we were aware of, and we were there, and we did lectures on like sustainable sex and youth engagement, not at the same time, different things. And it was a really fun space because everyone was in it together. And this idea of the queers of sustainability was cute. And so we played on that. We had Earth Day, we had Fad Planet. You know, all of our naming started in this very punny kind of way.
Yep.
And that was fun. Well, it's not fun anymore. It's just not. The world has gotten very serious. And it's not that the organization is hitting with a stick or anything like that. It's that these issues and the reality of what this is doing in people's lives requires a more sophisticated and nuanced approach. And I think that that's been really great because I have no background in movements and that sort of thing. I've been volunteering for most of my life, but not in this way. And and I, you know, as the founder, it's like I'm so glad that other people like Sophia and Lindy and others are stepping up and saying, you know, here's another way to think about this. Here's another conversation we can have. And I think that's true regardless of what organization you're in. It's not that we need to be serious and sad. And I don't mean that. It's not serious in a sad way. It's serious in a like, let's do this. Let's actually make a difference. And that's been really exciting to see within the organization, but also more broadly as we think about the world and where we're going. Because if we don't have serious conversations and be direct and be pointed about these things, not be quite so cute about it, where the message gets lost in a way.
Right.
You know, now I would say, you know, there's so much competing noise in the system because that's just we're inundated by need. So I'm just encouraging our audience to say, yeah, let's have some serious conversations. Still keep it fun. I mean, we are living fabulously. It's still a fabulous organization.
Lifestyle.
But yeah, but it's much more than being cute anymore.
Right. No, again, I really appreciate you speaking from the heart there, because that's the kind of message that our audience in, you know, the broader society needs to hear, you know, because you're right. For too many years, for decades, right, we have been misled into thinking that, you know, climate change wasn't the real threat, even though I think in the back of our minds, most of us believed it for the last 20 years, that it was such a threat that it is. And it is, you know, it is active. It's hard to deny it today. And you're right, you know, it's not fun to have to go through this, and we really do have to be serious. But I appreciate your approach, because what you're doing, you're talking about getting people involved and having some fun with it, but in a serious way, because we're dealing with serious issues, life and death and quality of life issues. And, you know, you're reaching out to a community and the broader community as well to tell people, look, you know, we really have to take action. And that's where we stand, you know, as individuals, we have to take action. And I really appreciate both you, Gerod, and you, Sophia, and everyone at Out for Sustainability doing what you're doing, because it is quite important work. Yes. Sophia, can I ask you the same question? Is there anything that you would like to elaborate on at this point? Any last words?
Sure, a couple things real quick. First of all, to the audience questions thing, I feel like when I attend something like this, I often think of a great question like 2 hours later. So
Right.
please do feel free to email us or DM us on Instagram. Like I said, we will be, well, I will be available to questions for questions. Maybe I can forward them to Gerod if he's okay with that. Anyway, so yeah, and yeah, thank you, Gerod. I think like something that this conversation is really reflecting is that we are sort of an organization emerging and going through sort of a transition moment, which is really exciting, and I'm really excited about it, but it's kind of odd to talk about in this phase. But I am really excited about what we have planned and what I think will be coming up later in the summer and into the fall for Out for Sustainability. And I really appreciate what Gerod just said. I think, part of the reason I was drawn to Out for Sustainability is because it is a fun organization and we're a fun group of people and we have fun. But I think also, thinking about climate change, thinking about some of the anti-queer sentiments and laws happening in this country, I'm also angry and I'm also feeling a lot of grief. So thinking about sort of how we can honor that in our programming, but also continue to build a community that does have fun and does have these moments of joy. I think that is also really important to sustain us and to build that community. So thank you, Gerod.
I think
Again,
joy is the one word that really carries through from the beginning to the end. This is a joyful organization, and we can have joy in our community. And I'm just so appreciative of Sophia sharing such a big idea with so many opportunities and trying to hone in on which ones to do and which ones to take advantage of. And saying no sometimes is the hardest thing in this organization.
Sure.
So anyway,
can't do
I'm
everything,
talking too much,
however.
but yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, fantastic. And again, Sophia, thank you for speaking from the heart there, because again, we all know of the history and also the present for the LGBTQ plus community, right? There are issues of safety. There are people who've had to live lives closeted or not living their authentic life. And that is a real burden. That's the type of thing that brings somebody down and can take away some of the fun out of life. So I'm really glad that you are highlighting that even though you're dealing with the serious topics, you have to have fun with it. I can see that the organization is focused on community building and supporting individuals through the community. And I think that that's really great, fantastic work. And I'm really pleased to have had both of you today on our program. Without the participation of the audience, I have actually kind of dried up my questions. And again, I don't want to just string this out for the last 8 minutes. So what I like to do is just take one more commercial break and thank our audience for coming today. But today we are again talking about sustainable inclusion, bridging queer identity and sustainability with Gerod Rdy and Sophia Paul. Remember that they're from Out for Sustainability. You can find Out for Sustainability at www.out4s.org, Out for Sustainability. Remember, you can go to the Green Institute website at thegreeninstitute.ng and search for the publications, where you can pick up Adenike Akinsumulu's latest text, The Principles of Green and Sustainability Science. Please check out the website, Out for Sustainability. Again, that's OUT4S.org. Think about taking a class at the Green Institute. We have several courses taught by sustainability experts that you'll find very enriching and also directly able to impact your life and your ideas. Please follow the Green HQ on social media. We're on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And lastly, you can also watch previous Green Room episodes at thegreeninstitute.ng/thegreenroom. We are here each month on the last Friday, on the third Friday of the month at 6 o'clock GMT. Please tune in September for our next episode. Ladies and gentlemen, please collaborate with me in thanking Gerod Rdy and Sophia Paul for being with us today. Thank you two very much for being with us.
It was a pleasure.
Yes, thank you so much for having us.
You're welcome. And good luck with Out for Sustainability.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, that'll be all for today. Have a fine day. And we can end the program. I have to say it was a pleasure talking with you too. Really, it's an interesting organization. I'm really pleased at the work you're doing. And again, I'm really grateful that you two came on the green room and shared your ideas.
Yeah, thank you for hosting the show, and it's great to be on. This is how we get things done, right? Like we
Certainly.
highlight each other.
Absolutely.
Yes,
Show
exactly.
up.
Yeah. So we'll be following your work. Please continue to follow our work and stay in contact. You never know where we can, link up sometime in the future. It sounds great. Like World Environment Day is also a big day for the Green Institute. We've had the last 2 years, we've had online seminars and workshops. So it's there's room for collaboration down the line, hopefully. So
Yeah, and I just want to point out, I should have before, but the international community, while Out for Sustainability doesn't technically serve globally yet, I won't put that on Sophia by any means, but there's a lot of energy out there, and there's a lot of desire. So
yeah. And there's a lot of
we
need.
can't just think about we can't just think about this from a U.S. perspective, because
Agreed.
it's not the whole story.
Agreed. Well, I appreciate your vision. I really do. And again, it's hard work, like you said earlier, talking about yourself. You're somebody who has volunteered in the past, but then all of a sudden you find yourself as the founder of an organization, and it's a whole new, mindset. It's a whole new set of responsibilities. But you two and the rest of your team are building something worthwhile. So I wish you the best of luck.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. My pleasure. Okay. I'm going to sign off
thanks.
now. I wish you two the best of luck, and we will catch up in the future.
Sounds great.
Sounds
Thank you
good.
so much.
You're welcome. Best wishes.
Mhm.